Hello my crafty friends, this is Monica from Allsewpetite. Welcome back to my channel. In this short tutorial I'm going to show you how to hack the Stevie bag into a backpack. So what I've done here is, instead of adding connectors to the side and attaching shoulder strap or crossbody strap, I've changed the back of my bag and I've added shoulder straps to make it as a mini backpack, and I think it turned out so cute. I've tried different connectors and I also added this beautiful overlay. I walk you through how to make your own patterns for those two pieces. They are very simple, and I walk you through how to assemble the back panel with those straps so you can adapt and hack your own Stevie bag or any other bag that you may have. So if you want to learn how to do it, then keep on watching. To make the Stevie bag as a backpack, you'll need to cut and assemble the bag as per sewing instructions. The only difference is that we need to add our shoulder straps to the back panel. So instead of adding the strap connectors and a strap to the side gusset, what we want to do is to omit this and add shoulder straps to the back panel. If you want, you can use the standard strap connectors that are included in the pattern. We still need two of them. However, I'm going to try something a little bit different today. So I've cut my connectors as triangles. So if you want to follow me along, what you want to do is to cut a square that is 11 by 11 and then slash that square diagonally. This way you'll have two triangle connectors for your backpack. Another thing I want to do is to use this overlay on the back panel to hide the ends of my straps. So I'm going to use webbing today for my shoulder straps, and I want to tuck them inside behind this overlay to hide all those raw edges. To make the template for my overlay, I simply took the front pocket pattern piece and I measured about 6 centimeters from the top edge and drew a line. So I folded that along that line, and then I was able to trace the outline to create this template. One thing I want to mention is that because this fabric has a little bit of stretch, I fused Decoville Light to the back of the fabric to give it a little bit structure and stability. On the connectors, I've done exactly the same thing, but only to half of the connector, because later we're going to fold our connectors in half and I didn't need that much stability. I didn't want to add that much bulk. If you want to make sure your shoulder straps are adjustable, you will also need two strap adjusters and either two D-rings or two rectangle rings. So I've got those ones here ready. Then you will also need webbing for your straps. I'm using 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch webbing today. If you don't have a webbing, or if you don't want to use webbing, then you can create fabric straps instead as per sewing instructions. If you are using triangle connectors, then grab your webbing and cut two pieces that are about 10 centimeters long. Then what you want to do is to take your D-rings or rectangle rings and feed those small pieces through. Fold your webbing in half and clip it. Do that on the other piece as well, just like that. Then what we're going to do is to take this to the machine and base those connectors along those two shorter edges. If you are using regular strap connectors, what you want to do is to finish them as per sewing instructions. Then take your D-rings or rectangle rings and wrap your finished connectors around those D-rings in exactly the same way. Now you can take your triangle connector, place the webbing on top, Then fold your connector in half along this longer edge. So you're going to fold your connector right sides together just like that. Then to create this short connector at the end, what you want to do is to realign the webbing. If you want to make this part a little bit longer, then place your webbing along the edge. And then we're going to stitch along this seam, so your webbing is going to be a little bit longer. However, I don't really like this because it tends to be a little bit floppy. I prefer this part to be a little bit shorter, so I'm going to move my connector up by about 2 centimeters, more or less. I want to make sure that I am able to sew this seam. So usually I would be able to see if I can stitch this seam using 1 centimeter seam allowance. You don't want to place it too high because then you will not be able to sew this seam. So just play with it, see how far you need that webbing to be for you to be able to sew this seam. So once you adjust your webbing, then you can clip that in place and then take this to the machine and sew the seam. Depending on how long is your webbing, you may want to trim it down. Then what you want to do is to turn your connector right side out. Go ahead and trim off the excess seam allowance. You want to make sure this edge is straight, just like this. I just checked and I'm going to trim my webbing slightly because it gets into this seam allowance and I don't really want to add extra bulk along this seam. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim the webbing at an angle, just like this. What I like to do is to burn the edges of my webbing to prevent them from fraying. So I'm going to quickly do just that. This way I don't have to worry about the webbing fraying. And I still have enough of the webbing so I don't have to worry that the seam is going to rip and my webbing will unravel. If you want, you can take this to the machine and top stitch your connector along all sides to just anchor everything in place. Otherwise, install a rivet in the center just to make it a little bit more secure. Place your connectors aside for a second, then take your strap adjusters and your webbing straps or your fabric straps. And what you want to do is to feed one end of your strap through the adjuster and wrap it around that middle bar, just like that. Then you're going to fold under this short edge by about 1.5 centimeters. Place it on top. Make sure your side edges are aligned. If you want, you can use a couple of clips to just hold that in place. Then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch along this folded edge just to anchor everything in place. You can also stitch a box with some stitching lines in the center or install a rivet just to give this strap more security. But since this is a very small backpack, I found that stitching just along this folded edge is more than enough. Then you're going to do exactly the same thing for the other strap. Now you can take your external back panel and place your connectors on top, just like that. So you want to line up those raw edges along the sides. Bring the edge of your connector as low as possible, but make sure to avoid those curved corners because you don't want to stitch your connector like this. So I tend to place it just at the end of this curved edge, just like this. Line up those edges and clip them together. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for my other connector. So I'm going to use my grid to ensure my connectors are exactly in the same place. Here we go. Clip that together. Now we can take this to the machine and we're going to base those connectors in place. If you are using the regular connector, you would do exactly the same thing, but instead of placing your connector straight like this and align those edges, you want to make sure this connector is at about 45-degree angle. So here would be your D-ring and you would place your connector like this and baste it in place. Take one of your straps and feed the loose end through your D-ring, just like that. Pull it through. So what you want to do is to make sure this folded edge is on top. So lay your strap flat like this and make sure your folded edge is on top. Then bring your strap and feed the end through the strap connector one more time in the same way we've done it previously. So you are wrapping the webbing or your strap around that middle bar and pull it through. You want to make sure your strap or your webbing is not twisted. So it should look something like this. So now we have an adjustable shoulder strap. Then do exactly the same thing for the other strap. Take your overlay and apply either some glue or double-sided tape to the back of the fabric. This will help with the alignment and prevent the fabric from shifting when we are stitching, unless you are using woven fabric, so you can pin your overlay on top. But since I'm using faux leather, because this overlay has raw edges, I cannot really use pins. So I'm going to apply double-sided tape instead. If you are not using the overlay, simply take your straps, make sure they are not twisted, and align those loose ends along the top edge. So you'll have to decide about the spacing between those straps. I usually measure about 2 centimeters from the center notch. So I have my center notch here, so there is about 4 centimeter gap between those straps. But since I'm using the overlay, I need to figure out the placement of this overlay, so then later I can place those ends behind and then stitch everything together. So we need to remember there is 1 centimeter seam allowance. So if I just tuck that underneath and I place my overlay on top, I think that's about 2.5 centimeters, more or less. So yeah, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to measure 2.5 centimeters from the top edge, and I'm going to place my overlay on top. So let me just mark this so I have a clear guideline. I'm going to turn this over this way so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm measuring 2.5 centimeters. I'm going to draw a line just like that. So later I'll be able to align my overlay along this line. I'm going to draw a line in the center so I have a guideline. Make sure you are using removable pen, otherwise you're going to have permanent lines. Now let's figure out the placement of this strap. So I'm going to place the overlay on top just for a second. Then grab my strap and place it on top, just so I have a rough idea. So I'm going to measure 2 centimeters from this center line and mark a little notch on both sides, just as a guideline. So if I place my strap ends on top like this, I think it should work pretty good. But because this is such a small backpack, I'm going to tilt my straps slightly. So instead of placing them straight, I want to tilt them just a tiny bit, just to make sure they are more comfortable to wear. I think that's going to be good. So I'm going to grab a couple of clips just to hold that in place. Here we go. I'm going to remove my overlay, and now I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to base the ends of my straps below this line. So you don't want to go over this line, you want to just base that in place. Next, you can remove the plastic cover from the back of your overlay. Center the overlay on top. Press it with your fingers so it sticks to the fabric. Here we go. Then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch the overlay around all sides. I think I'm going to add a couple of rivets just to anchor this webbing strap even more and just to give it extra detail. I think that will look pretty cute. So I'm going to do that now. This is what it looks like on a finished bag. I really like how this little backpack turned out. Let me know if you are planning to try this hack on a Stevie bag or any other bag that you may have. And subscribe to my channel for more content just like this one. See you next time. Stay crafty, friends. Bye.